At the beginning of the story, we see an elderly woman in a wedding dress laying unconscious on the escalator in the hotel. She was remembering her wedding day when she used to come to this hotel with her husband. When Carlos returned home, he felt a strange atmosphere. Oliver, his younger brother, was terribly nervous. Carlos told him that their mother had left them a lot of money, so they no longer needed to do illegal work. Then suddenly, Detective Marco arrived from the other room. Carlos was scared after seeing him. Marco had already talked everything out with Oliver, but Carlos wasn't going to give up. He asked Marco to show him the arrest warrant, but Marco didn't have one. In such a situation, Carlos was no longer able to think straight. He quickly attacked Marco and started running down the stairs, taking Oliver with him. Marco followed suit. In the panic, Marco's gun accidentally fired, and the bullet hit Carlos straight in the leg, causing him to fall to the ground. Then suddenly, there was a huge explosion. Meanwhile, blood was flowing from Carlos' wound. In panic, Oliver tore off his hoodie and tied it over Carlos' wound. Then, red with anger, Oliver attacked Marco. But Marco was very strong and easily pushed Oliver away. Oliver yelled, "We have to get Carlos to the hospital." Then Oliver lifted Carlos onto his shoulders, and the three of them started descending the stairs. But as soon as they reached downstairs, the door was closed. He went back upstairs, but friends, he kept stopping at the same floor every time. It seemed as if they were trapped in a nightmare. Frustrated, Marco asked Carlos and Oliver to wait there and started descending the stairs himself. But as soon as he reached the bottom, he came back to the same place. It was as if he were stuck in a maze. Now Marco's mind was confused. He was scared every time he came to the same place. Calming down a bit, Marco threw his keys down the stairs to find out the truth. But what was this, friends? The key fell to him from above. Now they were convinced that they were stuck in an infinite loop. Here, Oliver wanted to help his brother, but there was no network on his phone. On the other hand, Carlos also refused to remove the bullet because doing so could spread the infection. Then Marco broke the fire extinguisher, took out water, and gave it to Carlos, who used it to wash his brother's wound. In this way, 4 hours had passed. Marco felt a pang of sadness as he looked at the picture of his wife and kids. He administered medicine to Carlos, who quickly lost consciousness, driven by hunger. Marco and Oliver retrieved food from a machine and began to eat. Marco mentioned that it was their wedding anniversary. However, Oliver seemed unmoved, even angry, threatening Marco that he would pay if anything happened to his brother. Oliver searched through his bag but found nothing of use. The next morning, Carlos' eyes fluttered open. He knew his time was limited and urged Oliver to live a good life. Carlos passed away peacefully in Oliver's arms, leaving Oliver heartbroken. As Marco examined the food machine, he was astonished to find it had automatically refilled itself. Turning around, he saw Oliver standing meaninglessly, pointing a gun at him. Marco tried to explain that the shot was an accident. Oliver refused to believe him. Shifting to another family, we see Daniel and Camila, siblings living with their mother, Sandra, and stepfather Roberto. They were on a family outing when Roberto still gave Camila a juice containing an allergen. Camila needed to use the restroom and gave the inhaler to Roberto. Sandra later discovered Roberto's trick and became furious, scolding him harshly. They continued their drive, but Camila soon began to struggle with breathing. Pulling over, Sandra and Roberto exited the car, only to find the inhaler had fallen from Roberto's pocket and broken. Camila's condition worsened, forcing them to turn back home. As they walked, they heard a loud bang from a distance. similar to the one we had heard earlier. Arriving at the gas station, they found it eerily quiet. Sandra purchased medicine for Camilla, and as they continued their journey, Roberto's eyes were drawn to a familiar sign. Sandra's anger towards Roberto was still simmering, and they continued to argue. Daniel tried to comfort his sister but was confused by the unfolding events. After a while, they found another gas station. No one was there either. On the way, he saw the same sign again. Roberto gradually began to feel scared. He said, "We are visiting the same place over and over again." But Sandra scolded Roberto and said he had to keep going because Camilla's condition was getting worse. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't escape this place, returning to the same sign and gas station. Meanwhile, Camilla had become unconscious in the car. Frustrated, Roberto stopped the car and decided to go to the fields. Sandra, sitting in the car, was scared. She left the car with the children. Sandra felt like she was trapped in a nightmare. She was wandering around the same place again and again. Angry and upset, she started slapping herself to wake up. Daniel also became tired and started walking with Camilla. Then Sandra moved ahead alone in the car. Sandra was so scared, she hid in the gas station and started crying. She didn't know what to do. On the other hand, Daniel's exhaust made Camilla lie down on the road and sat beside her. When Roberto came back, he said they were stuck in the same place. The scene then shifts to the earlier part of the movie. We see that Oliver and Marcos were still trapped in those stairs. It had been 35 years since they were trapped. Marcos had grown old and couldn't even walk. But Oliver was still fit because he exercised daily. Every day, that machine and the bag were filled automatically. Oliver tried to keep everything there organized. He had arranged different items in piles. He had devised a new way of pathing with his water bottle and used a nail cutter to shape. It could be said that he had made those stairs his home. Marco's condition had become very bad. It seemed that both of them had gone crazy. Oliver used to sit and pray in front of Carlos' skeleton every day. He and Marcos used to count the days by making marks on the walls. Marcos often drew his old memories on the walls. Every night before sleeping, he used to repeat his name, probably because he was forgetting himself. On the other hand, 35 years had also passed on that road. Those people were also stuck in the same place for many years. Roberto had become so old that he used to lie down in the car. Sandra had gone completely crazy. She didn't say anything anymore. Daniel had grown up and lived with a mouse in the field. He had collected stuff from the gas station and built a hut. He used to bring food and water from there every day. Every day when the supplies were restocked, Daniel would find his sister's broken inhaler. He would pick it up and throw it in a corner. He used to wander in the fields alone and listen to songs. One day, Roberto found Camilla's doll on the road and felt it in Daniel's hut. Then Daniel went to meet Roberto. Roberto told him about Sandra, but Daniel didn't remember much about his mother. Then suddenly Roberto felt as if he wanted to tell Daniel something very important, but he couldn't remember it. Here, suddenly at 3 o'clock in the night, Marcos started shouting loudly. Oliver ran to him. Marcos said he remembered everything. He said that his real name was Daniel and this whole life was just a lie. He shot Carlos. That's why they were all stuck in a loop. Meanwhile, Sandra passed away inside the car on the road. Roberto buried her next to Camilla. Daniel started crying bitterly, remembering his sister. That same night, Roberto and Marcos both felt a headache as if someone was hitting them with a hammer. He started muttering again and again, "This is not real." Roberto and Marcos were stuck in the same moment for 35 years, all because of one mistake of theirs. He explained to Daniel and Oliver that when someone's life is lost because of someone else, then the person gets trapped in a similar loop. Roberto told Daniel, "Whenever you see a police car, you will forget your name." Marcos told Oliver, "And when you see an elevator, you will forget your name too." Roberto said that his real name was Ruben. When he was 10 years old, he got trapped in the river along with his teacher and friend. Suddenly, the teacher fell into the river and Ruben's friend got hurt. 3 days later, his friend died, and since then, he and his teacher had been stuck in this loop. He kept wandering in the same river for 35 years. When the teacher was about to die, he also gave the same advice to Roberto. Eventually, Roberto found his way out of the river and made a fresh start with Sandra. Meanwhile, Marcos told Oliver that he was actually Daniel. He was remembering everything before he died. Roberto had stopped him from sitting in the police car because doing so would have caused him to lose his old memories. But Daniel didn't listen to him and became Marcos. Before dying, Roberto and Marcos gave a red diary to Daniel and Oliver. It contained many photographs and things written by him. Eventually, Daniel buried Roberto and headed down the road. There he saw a police car. He went back and burned his hut. Then he opened the car and forgot everything. He sat in the car and went to the city. He pretended to be Marcos by wearing the police uniform that was in the car, and finally he got caught in the loop again when he accidentally killed Carlos. On the other hand, after Marcos left, Oliver could clearly see the elevator as if someone was pulling him in. He tried his best to stop himself, but he couldn't stop himself. It seemed as if he was going crazy. Finally, he went into the elevator and then, wearing the uniform of a servant present there, he became a man named Carl. After a while, a married couple came into the elevator. As they approached his room, Carl released a bee at them. The bee went straight to the groom and stung him. Then there was a loud bang from a distance, and everything once again became as before, as if these people were trapped in a nightmare. And with this, the unique movie ends here. So friends, if any of you have understood this strange movie, then do tell in the comments, and for similar movies, subscribe to Movie Recap English.